Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekends with Amit, and I am your host, Krishna. As you know, we, in our way of life, whether it's in an organization, whether in our personal lives, or whether we look at some other spheres which excites us. Now, if we look at all this, there is one thing which is very, very important: leadership. Now, what is leadership? Is it just about leading a lot of people following you? A lot of dictators do that. Do we define it as leadership? Or there are people like Gandhi, or there are people who bring in new ideas, fundamental changes. We call them fundamental creativity. Is that leadership? There could be many connotations to it. The subject for today is quantum leadership, and we will know from the very best in the field what does that mean and how it can apply to you. Please help me welcome Professor Amit Goswami and Dr. Valentina Anisar. A very, very warm welcome to the show. Uh, the subject for the day is quantum leadership. Now, if we look at the recent events that are happening all around the world, primarily in the political arena, as well as in the business arena, as well as in some other areas as well, it appears that things are not as they should be. And a lot of questions will come towards leadership, of how things are being led. What would be your view on it, and what would be the view of the quantum worldview on leadership? Over to Professor Goswami.
Hello, everyone. Quantum leadership has become the focus of our recent quantum science investigation for a variety of reasons. First of all, of course, Krishna already mentioned there are crisis conditions today. Global climate change is the major one, but no less important is the failure of capitalistic economy. There's tremendous new attacks on democracy versus, the opposition wants to go back to dictatorship, something like olden day kings. Uh, and then there are, of course, health crisis, education crisis, people's well-being crisis. Recently, we had the pandemic. That was a crisis. Are these going to be the rule of the day from now on? People are wondering. All this. If there is a single cause that can be assigned to any of this, I know it is more complicated, but if very rudely speaking, if somebody said, okay, what is the single cause for it? I would have to say that it is the dogma that establishment scientists adopted back in 1960 or thereabouts and finalized form 1980s. That is the idea of scientific materialism. Materialism has been with us for millennia. The idea that everything is made of matter. There is nothing else which is real. Everything else is imagination of the human being, which is material. And recently, scientists decided to put a scientist approval on it. They said we now have enough proof that all these things that distracts us from the material nature of things, namely our life and our consciousness, stuff like new capacities that consciousness are capable of doing, that seems very out of what material can do, things like love or appreciation of beauty or ability to be just. This thing seems to be out of reach of the material condition. But nevertheless, scientists said we know so much about life that can be explained by matter. We know so much about the psyche that can be explained as materially conditioned behavior that we can safely declare matter is responsible for everything. And leadership, likewise, which in the olden days were based on things like archetypal images that we had. Some of us dreams of powerful people, images of kings, emperors, empress. These are images that we often see in our dreams. Carl Jung said they come from the collective unconscious. They are Jungian archetypes of the representatives of power. They symbolize power. So old-fashioned idea of kingship that was prevalent for a long time before democracy was created in the 18th century. Kingship was the way that we dealt with power, leadership. And now things have changed. Single factor is, again, scientific materialism. How that has changed things? Scientific materialism has created a new kind of elitism, not only the old-fashioned elitism based on this archetypal idea of king, but also new kind of leadership that has come from the dictum that Francis Bacon gave us. Knowledge is power. People who have knowledge enough to manipulate other people who don't have knowledge, they become the leader. This is called the elitism of meritocracy. So there is a polarization of worldview. One worldview suggests leadership of dictatorial kings. The other worldview, materialist worldview, suggests this people who have knowledge to manipulate others who don't have the knowledge. Now I need to explain what knowledge is. Knowledge is when you know something, but knowledge has two aspects, obviously. You can know at a level which is called information. You don't analyze it, you don't need to understand it. You just take the information and apply it whenever you see that it applies. Machines can process information. They can be represented as symbols. Machines can process it. But machines cannot understand. They don't care to, they don't have the capacity to. They don't have the need to. Human beings don't process things that way. They cannot process so much information, maybe, but they make it up very much by understanding. They understand the message the information is trying to give. Of course, that message often is ambiguous. That requires further refinement of the understanding. That makes the human being special. But recently, scientific materialism is saying that information is enough. So the few people who know better but hide it carefully, they have the knowledge. They understand the situation. So now they have the secret weapon. They understand, whereas people who are fooled by the idea that information is power, information is enough, they can easily be manipulated. People who really understand the situation of what is going on. This is what is going on. We succumb to this day by day by getting our information from social media, from the news media, from whatever, entertainment media, wherever, politicians, from all our leaders, even business leaders, who are supposed to make money. But they too has joined this power game. Business leadership is no longer just about money making, profit making. It's also about power making. And this is the idea. Either power comes from that old-fashioned images, or a corruption of it, religious. That is also the same kind of thing. They also have the image of bishops and popes, symbols of power, and or it comes from meritocrats. Neither form of leadership is satisfactory. How do we know? Because look at only 60 years of this kind of situation in society where worldview has become polarized between these two views, the old-fashioned religious worldview versus the new worldview of scientific materialism. Look at the crisis conditions of today. What produces the crisis? How do we evaluate the crisis? How do we get out of the crisis? Obviously, we badly need understanding, understanding of what is causing the problem. First of all, is our collective unconscious something that is the right way of looking at things? Collective unconscious is suggesting that there are archetypes of which our ancestors long time ago made a representation in a collective way so that everybody has access to them. These representations is what we today call Jungian archetypes to celebrate Jung, who discovered this collective unconscious and its archetypes, these images. When you analyze these images, you find a remarkable thing. These ancestors, they actually realized the situation, realized the problem of using any kind of elitism as a form of monopolizing power. They realized the danger, even in those early days, and prescribed that power, abundance, this kind of survival level archetype really have to be explored with some transpersonalizing archetypes, love and goodness. What's the difference? When we do not have love and goodness, we just want personal power. We just want personal abundance. Why is that incomplete? How do you know it's incomplete? First of all, we compete. We cannot cooperate with others. It's always for us. That doesn't satisfy. We see that it's not satisfying, but we cannot let go. We cannot let go. This dissatisfaction then creates atrocities in the world. Mistakes are made. For example, excessive greed culture. Greed is good. You know that slogan from a 1986 movie, Hollywood movie, I'm sure. Greed is good. What does that do? It gives us huge income disparity between lower levels who are manipulated and the leadership that manipulate. This cannot last very long. The crisis is pointing that out. Crisis conditions are always a call for change. And let's go to business leadership. Business leadership is supposed to take us through a good system of economics. A successful system that has established itself now all over the world, except a few exceptions, is capitalism. Discovered by Adam Smith in the 18th century, capitalism says that if producers and consumers both follow their selfish interest alone, and if the market is kept free, then the invisible hands of free market will guide us to a situation of equilibrium between production and consumption so that prices can be stable. Even resources can be apportioned equitably between all sectors. So when country after country adopted this capitalism, then apart from minor fluctuations that are called business cycle, bust and boom in popular language, economy will heat up sometimes, inflation, and then that will be followed by recession. So this could not be eliminated in Adam Smith capitalism. So this was the shortcoming. But otherwise, Adam Smith capitalism has worked remarkably better, for example, than Marxist economy, which has been tried in the Soviet Russia of the past did not succeed. That had the idea that we should just create a segment who should be told that they will be guaranteed, given guaranteed income. But even with guaranteed income, without the selfish incentive, people didn't work adequately enough for this economies to suspend itself. Whereas in capitalism, where people work and consume for their selfish interest, it does work. But except it also doesn't, It doesn't because this business cycle that I have talked about. So when politics became democratic and people had a say in how they elect their leadership, naturally, the first thing leaders thought is to eliminate this business cycle. And just so happens that this system came to a gross failure. It's called this, that is the great upheaval, economic upheaval, complete doldrum of economics, complete blocking of economic movement that took place in the 1930s, called Great Depression. It was so depressed that unemployment went up to something like 25, 30, 40%. And of course, a democracy cannot handle that. Every government will be put out of business if people are unemployed. So they brought up changes. These changes are called demand side changes. That's the first change that took place. And then again, new ideas gave us supply side changes. The difference is in demand side changes, government funding keeps the economy going. Government funding gives you unemployment insurance. Then you spend money that keeps the economy going. In supply side economics, the idea is even more ambitious. You give money to the rich people, hoping that they will invest that money back into the economy, and the economy will grow and jobs will be created, getting us out of recession. Neither of them really work in a very satisfactory way, although on the whole, demand side works slightly better than supply side, which has no recorded success up to date. Means people just don't invest back in business. Instead, they invest in gambling economy, like gambling part of the economy, like stock market and derivatives. Did not work out. And then under materialism, in the past 60 years, we have another form of capitalism dominated by the idea that we should control the money supply. Federal government should control the money supply so that you can keep interest rates cheap. And the idea was that this will eliminate inflation forever. And we never have to worry about inflation hitting up in subsequent recession. Has it worked out that way? No, no again. Recently, all over the world, there's huge threat, especially in America, huge threat of inflation. So the problem remains. Economy is not working. Can a new economics be created? A few years back, I wrote a book called Quantum Economics. I researched the subject and I found that indeed human beings, in the quantum worldview, is not a single material body, but we also have a vital body because you are alive. Those energies, vital energies, we feel. And then we have mind, we think, and those thinking energies is the focus of the mind. So physical body, vital body, mental body. And then we have a huge amount of potentiality. This potentiality is what ancient people was trying to point out when they said that we also have a spiritual side. We have the capacity to love. We have the capacity to be good. They didn't use the word potentiality because that's a quantum word. Quantum physics says that objects are potentialities until consciousness intervenes and chooses from potentialities the actual event. It's a quantum concept, potentiality. And this misled people all along because some people could engage love and other people couldn't. If love is the nature of human being, then of course that shouldn't be. Everybody should be able to love. This is not true. This is just not true. Some people are naturally narcissistic. So you have to recognize these parts of us are potentialities, not actualized in most people. A few of us can actualize it and show the capacity of life, showing the importance of understanding these concepts, where they come from. They come from those archetypes. They come in the experience of intuition, in the experience of creativity. That's how they can be cultivated. But they can be cultivated. They are potentiality for everyone. Everyone, in principle, can cultivate them. Heretofore, spiritual traditions, religious tradition has telling us that this is the other side of human being. We have also good, not only evil stuff that is called negative emotional brain circuits in the brain, evil stuff like selfishness. Religions have been telling us, oh, we can be selfless, we can have love, except they miss the point that those things have to be cultivated. They're potentialities. They are not inherent in us. So now we are stuck with a system where we think matter is everything, archetypes are completely ignored, values are just pretend values. At the best, we have to pretend them because otherwise people become uncivilized with each other and society cannot perform that way. So pretend values are pushed by the materialist worldview. The religious worldview don't like the idea of pretension, but what do they replace with? People don't have the power of really loving without trying, without practicing, without meditating, without being creative. So we have this chaotic situation. One half says pretend, but pretension can only go that far. The other half says pretension is bad. Do them anyway, but of course people can't. They only let all the negative emotions hang out. So we have these chaotic conditions. Greed, domination, anger, abuse, jealousy, envy, these things persist in all societies all over the world. Now, do you see why we need new kind of leadership? Newtonian leadership cannot solve these problems because when we analyze carefully, we find that the kind of ability that our ancestors projected by developing the collective unconscious, that kind of collective memory requires a connectivity that works without signals. This signal-less communication is called non-local communication. This non-locality is something that material interactions cannot simulate. So if you hold on to the Newtonian worldview, you are never going to be a leader who can, because he doesn't even know how it works, simulate the idea of cooperation, which requires non-locality. He will forever be a competing being, not realize that competition limits power, or you are the only one who is fighting for yourself. In cooperation, you become one, two, three, as many people as you can cooperate. And even more than that, because you, even if you truly understand non-locality, can connect with many, many more people in a potentiality and actualizing the potentiality gradually. So power becomes unlimited. That unlimited expansion we cannot do because we don't mix up power with love, which is how cooperation enters the fray. The simple things can be included easily by somebody who understands quantum physics and practices it. Quantum non-locality can be practiced. Meditation gives us that ability. Who doesn't know that meditation expands your consciousness? Your capacity to love becomes greater. Your capacity to see beauty becomes greater. Seeing truth becomes easier. Who doesn't know that? That's why religions still have some influence, because we know what those religions are saying. There's some core truth in that. So non-locality. What else? Quantum science suggests that real learning, something that can be part of your character, something that you never forget. Real learning happens discontinuously, not continuously. Real learning requires what we call quantum leaps. When electrons go from one atomic orbit to another, it does not go through the intermediate space. Similarly, when we discover something truly new of value, we do not do it algorithmically, step by step. We just jump from one way of thinking to completely different way of thinking. We change the context of thinking itself. In addition, we bring feeling into the picture. We feel that this is correct in our gut. We feel that this is right in our heart. So our body enters the equation, our vital body enters the equation. And this is how creativity, supramental, can change us. In Newtonian physics, it's just force that can change people. I coerce people into following me. In quantum physics, forces can only produce potentialities. It is consciousness that chooses the actual event always. So real profound change does not come from action of force. It comes from by changing the choice that another person is taking. How do I do that? Persuade, cooperate, use non-locality, depend on tuning to the purpose of conscious movement. Conscious movement has purpose. Newtonian movement has no purpose. They are completely causal. Conscious movement has purpose. This meaning and purpose what is lacking in today's leaders. They only look for profit if it is business. They only look for personal power if it is politics. And some people look for both, but never get satisfaction that way. Satisfaction comes from realizing that power, abundance, these things are not a zero-sum game. They're infinite to expand in an infinite way. I can have infinite power if I cooperate with others, if I know how to bring out cooperation spirit in others. This is what we need from quantum leaders. Valentina?
Hello, everybody. Let me just continue on the subject and hoping that everybody understands that this is part of what we need, you know, as transformation. And also that's what we want from all the students that we are training in our courses. Because, I mean, whether man or woman, and no matter the area where you are, eventually you need to become that, you know. And there are, I mean, if you study, we studied because we are writing a book on quantum leadership, and we found a quote from Lee Iacocca. You know, he said that once a leader lifted us up and made us want to do better. So of course you need to learn how to inspire others, but you cannot inspire others unless you transform yourself. And this Iacocca, you know, he came with an interesting 9-step recipe, you know, for this kind of lifting leadership, and he called them the 9 C's. So I just remind you, maybe if you know them. So of course, first of all is curiosity. Learning to look in new ways, accept new opinions, not be just stubborn and contracted in that way. So curiosity. Then, of course, courage. You need to learn to explore new ideas, to open to that. Then conviction, then creativity, thinking out of the box. Then common sense and competency, of course. And he called it character. Then a charisma, special type of charisma, as Amit already discussed, and communication. So indeed, this is a good list, and some of these qualities hint to, if you know Ayurveda, to a sattvic qualities, sattva, tattva. But if you want, we can even go further, you know, to explore which would be the quantum principles. And as Amit really started now, you know, you can start looking at becoming a leadership on certain qualities under the lens of the quantum worldview and its principles, as Amit mentioned already, non-locality and the others. So to remember again a little bit more of the quantum principles, the downward causation of choice that comes with non-locality, yeah, discontinuity, tangle, hierarchy. So if you want a quantum business leader, has to engage these principles and inspire his followers or associates to do the same. So we also know as leaders, the importance of intention, and of course you need to train yourself in the art of creativity and discover all the subtleties of the science of manifestation. Yeah, and it's of course the doobie-doo and all everything that is about the creativity. So just take a look at the other webinars if you don't know about creativity. So again, it's much more than just the Newtonians, leaders, dominant interest, which is only to make money and put great limits on his or her curiosity. Just be stuck to that because that's making money. But the quantum leader, is removing this shackle, if you want, and engages curiosity for a project with open-mindedness, on a short term, on a long term as well. And of course, money and abundance, even material abundance, very good, can be a bottom line up to a point, but you cannot let yourself bothered by that when you are acting in a creative way. And now a very special quality that I would say is courage. So it's not just the mental courage like you find in the Newtonian leaders' courage, so not just mental. Because again, fear is natural, So you have fear for new and fear against taking risks usually, yeah. So you try to overcome your fear with rational arguments, occasionally getting boosts from these negative emotions, like Amit mentioned again, competitiveness, greed, and so on. But the quantum leader is working really honestly to transform the energy of fear into the energy of courage. With a two-pronged approach, so it's of course you learn about vital creativity, and that means working on the first chakra, increasing rootedness, and security, and the third chakra to increase self-respect and willpower and so on, yeah. And in the same time, you also work on understanding and developing the intuitive level, to be guided. And in that way, there's courage coming from your gut, and then it's much more than just a rational argument. Then, of course, the conviction, that enables you to defy the common worldly wisdom, to follow your own path eventually, when you really feel it in your heart, which actually comes when you have a quantum leap to the truth, when you really have an encounter, even a small encounter with the truth. Suddenly you will develop this kind of conviction, and then you can naturally inspire others, of course you can inspire to do positive only if you are positive, so it's again walk the talk, yeah. And if you want the Newtonian leader, it's always a lot of fear, and just you have to obey and to be loyal and just really follow only that, but that's not the way of the quantum leader. Of course, creativity, it's a huge one. That's basic to leadership, which a Newtonian leader does not believe in at all. So a Newtonian leader is just kind of predict and control, right? But when you say quantum creativity, quantum leader, we work on really acquiring the insight, and then upon manifestation, we get a genuine new and original competence, if you want, in a new field, and we are using our inner creativity to get a character, that everybody will recognize as authentic and original, and then you follow, So then of course it's not about communication, which is not based on just a sexual charisma, which is for a Newtonian leader. It doesn't mean that sexual energy is not important, and it is a huge energy and very important one. But the quantum leader is dancing to a different tune that comes mainly from the intuitive level, when you allow the exploration of really archetypes, divine attributes like abundance and power, to mix, as Amit said, with archetypes like love and goodness. Yeah. Then the other ones, which I find important, is responsibility and integrity and humility. You may not think about them initially. And it has to be also authentic cooperation, constructive negotiation, and the good coordination. And then, yeah, it's also something very important to be able to answer to other people's negative emotions with emotional mastery. That's a big one, because that really manifests when we are transformed, And I would say that when we speak about the scale of happiness, so it's a person that reached at least level 3 on this scale of happiness. Yeah, so it's a lot. Again, it's a responsibility. You can be responsible for an idea, for a product, if you own it. Yeah, so if it's yours, it's not just that you're hired in a company. um, right. And again, integrity is what we call authenticity at the ego level. Remember, in quantum spirituality, maybe you want to read that book, Quantum Spirituality, we describe this path of quantum spirituality, which is not to just destroy the ego, but actually to develop authenticity. It's our ego, again, consists of a character, which is habit, pattern, and learned expertise. Yeah. And the persona or masks that we choose, a mask, as we see appropriate. And again, but when we are me-centered, we choose this persona or mask opportunistically, which of course translates as inauthenticity, which is a behavior is not compatible with the real character. But when you become authentic as a result of transformation, we discard simply the masks of inauthenticity or something that is not congruent with your ego or character. And then again, if you want authenticity, it's also ego integrity. Yeah, it's not living in the shadow. What you mean by ego dominated living, And then, of course, when I say humility, it's very important because it allows us to listen to others and to also to our own intuition. Yeah, and it also allows you to say when you have a failure and to admit that you've been wrong. That's an essential ingredient of creativity. I know so many people in very high positions which are never able to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, a boo-boo or something. So that's showing for me where they are. So yeah, there is I think Amit was giving this example with a comic strip who said, how can birds fly? Because they take themselves lightly. So, and again, as I mentioned, cooperation is another aspect very important to make transformations, to again, it's evoking that non-local principle. And when we say, again, quantum activism or quantum leadership, we refer to using force of authority, using persuasion, and changing your choice through negotiation, but again, not by manipulation at all, rather than through inspiration, I would say. And again, this emotional mastery may be the most difficult, I think, because again, it's not easy to achieve. It requires vital creativity of very high potency. It's even opening of the sixth chakra and maybe even control over hypothalamus and pituitary master gland. So, because these are the two brain organs that control the negative emotion brain circuits. So this would be some of the qualities maybe you want to ponder upon them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And while both Professor Goswami and you were explaining these things, one thing was coming to my mind. In our audience, there could be several people who are leaders in their own ways. And they might feel this quantum leadership a little bit intimidating because it incorporates a lot of new things that a lot of people have not heard about yet. So I'd like to put in a word here. I know that time is stretching today, that there is this remark which is widely circulated on social media, Google, etc., saying that it is attributed to Richard Feynman that nobody understands quantum mechanics. This statement is a sort of a catchword, but it is not true. Everybody understands quantum mechanics if you look at it correctly. So it is the way you are looking at things which makes all the difference. And what we are proposing here is that worldview, is that element which makes the problems that are plaguing us today, the crisis that Professor Goswami was talking about today, they can make these crises go away, and this is going to be a better future. But to wrap it up, over to Professor Goswami quickly.
Thank you, Krishna. Yeah, nobody understands quantum mechanics. It's a wonderful way to keep people ignorant of the wonderful things that quantum physics is saying.
Yeah.
If Richard Feynman cannot understand it, that an ordinary person, how can he or she understand it? No, it is not imposed like that. It is imposed from more of a incapability of the worldview that Richard Feynman followed, namely everything is made of matter, incapability of that worldview to make sense of quantum physics. It can't. Quantum physics introduces very non-Newtonian principles, and materialism cannot deal with that. Anyway, it is also true, though, that to understand quantum physics, you need to change your prejudices, you need to change your worldview, especially those people who are in leadership position, because often this me-centeredness that we have built into the way our brain works, it works against us. It makes us think that through rational thinking, we can do everything. And that's unfortunate because we can't, Creative people are what run civilization, always have, always will, and they don't dance to rational thinking. They invariably use creative thinking with a lot of noble emotions like love, and that's what gives us civilization, their effort. So to get there from the base level human condition, which is full of miscenteredness and negative emotions, pleasure seeking, and all that information processing, and all that, to this level where you are able to explore power with love, it's not easy. We need training. So, along with the ideas that we are having, is developing these ideas of how to define leadership beyond Newtonian leadership, beyond the charismatic leaders, scandalous leaders, selfish leaders who lead us down the garden path into this ruinous situation of crisis conditions today. If we go on to go beyond that, how do we train these new leaders? How do we teach them quantum worldview? Without really making an effort, we cannot do it. So Valentina and I and Krishanu and many others, we established this training for quantum worldview, including all things, the question of leadership, how to be a quantum leader. So I cannot encourage you more to join our program. It is in collaboration with University of Jaipur in India. The degrees we give are fully approved by University Grants Commission in India, like all other Indian universities, fully affiliated by the government of India itself. And we teach all these wonderful things: how to be healthy, how to be prosperous without compromising on love, cooperation, how to find well being and happiness in life. Come, check us out. We will teach you how to be a quantum leader. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Goswami and Dr. Rani sir. It was wonderful to have this discussion. I'm sure our listeners would have, our viewers rather, would have a lot of things in their mind. So if you have been listening intently, I'm sure you will have questions. And then we have our email ID info@amitgoswami.org. Please write to us. We will get back to you. Till then, thank you so much.